Hi, everyone. Greg Martin here with Teach Coach Live Consulting, staffing for boarding schools, and wanted to shoot a quick video, talk a little bit about some of the economic data that's been coming out of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, also the Federal Reserve Board. Chairman Powell gave a, uh, a talk this morning that was actually on the Brookings website and was a webcast talking about just really the unemployment rate and how that is going to sort of cascade through the economy, the global economy, for really into the year 2021 is what the IMF is forecasting. So currently, according to IMF data, 81% of the world's workforce is not working, which is just mind-bending. It makes the numbers from the 2008 Great Recession seem laughable. And the IMF is forecasting that if there's sort of a return to some sort of normal interaction and business and travel by August, that we'll be seeing a tremendously negative outlook in most countries, but not a full recovery until later in the year 2021. So where does that put schools, boarding schools and colleges? And if you have been paying attention, and I strongly suggest that boarding schools spend a lot of time looking at what is going on in the liberal arts college world and overall in higher education in general, uh, in terms of the forecasting models that schools, colleges are using when it comes to declines in revenue and when it comes to declines in international admissions and sort of what they're doing with tuition resets and how they're already at a point where they're looking past this current academic year into fall of 2020. Some schools are forecasting a decline of 75% in international student attendance. Um, Others are using a more sort of optimistic number of 15%. But it's important, I think, that we look at the data coming out of higher ed um, as a marker for what we can expect to see in the boarding school world. And just like in higher ed, where we have your Harvards of the world, in the boarding school world, you do have that similar tiering of your large, well-known, well-funded, endowed schools down to the schools that are running very slim margins, that are really budget tight, 90% tuition driven, etc. Um, and I think by paying attention to what's going on in higher education, it will give us some modeling in the boarding world. The caveat being that even your sort of most underfunded college has a guaranteed source of income that boarding schools do not, and that income is in the form of financial aid coming from the government, whether it's direct loans from the government, subsidized, unsubsidized, or in the form of Pell Grants. So even your really small liberal arts college that might be struggling tremendously with filling and discounting tuition 50, 60% or higher, those schools still have, they know they can get X number of dollars no matter what, as long as they accept students um, coming from certain backgrounds with financial aid. Boarding schools don't have that luxury. We can't guarantee that freshmen are going to show up with at least $15,000 in cash coming from the federal government. That's a cushion that boarding schools don't have. So how then do you build out a model if we really don't know how our domestic boarding families are being impacted by COVID-19 with regard to job losses, and we don't know how our international families are being impacted by COVID-19 with regard to job losses, and we don't know how our international families are going to manage what happens in August, whether or not we're going to have travel restrictions put on by the U.S. government, or whether we're going to see travel restrictions imposed by other governments, or whether we're going to see a limiting on the number of F1 visas, or a willingness on the part of other governments to allow students to go abroad for school. As well, we really can't bank on students from certain countries being able to move as much money. Restrictions on wire transfers and things like that. So as we try to build out the fall of 2021, boarding schools are going to have to think long and hard about what kind of programming is their value proposition. I think one of the things we're seeing is that the success of online content delivery, and it has been successful for many schools. I think a lot of people are finding, well, we can do this and it works pretty well. And a lot of students are actually finding that they enjoy some of the freedom and autonomy that come with online platforms. The question is going to be, if we can deliver the academic form online or part of it online, would it make sense to keep that as an option? And if so, what does it do with regard to your value proposition of boarding? How can we redefine our boarding program, our pastoral care program, to make that what people come for? And I think that's a great opportunity for schools to sort of sit back, reevaluate the boarding experience, and be more purposeful in implementing residential life programming and having that pastoral care, that boarding experience really be top notch, and what you are essentially offering as something that day schools cannot do. But again, it all revolves around the modeling of what sort of numbers are there going to be in the fall, and how many students are going to either be asking for financial aid for the first time, increased financial aid, or simply not coming. And that's going to impact your staffing model, because you don't really know how many courses you need, how many English classes you need, how many sections of this, how much coaching. But as with any crisis, as Churchill said, don't let a good crisis go to waste, which is a horrible thing to say, but it resonates. One of the options here is really thinking past the rule book that we've always gone by, thinking past the idea that Carnegie credit hours are something that always have to exist, that we have to be college prep when the entire notion of college is really being questioned. That the idea of athletics, is it time to decouple, team sports from the academic experience, which is what most countries do. Most countries, they don't put those two together. And that doesn't say you get rid of activity and you get rid of things like yoga and tennis and swimming and those things, but instead of spending anywhere between 10 and 20 hours on a sport that a student may never play in college, maybe it's time to reassess whether or not there's something we can offer in that space that's going to have a greater value for those kids, while still offering sort of a program of athletics that might look different. At the same time, could this be a great opportunity to then open up online learning to students that are on campus, but then give those students opportunities to get involved in apprenticeships or externships or training courses that might not be available if they were to sort of be in a normal school day with classes running from between 8 and 3. So there's a lot of opportunity here, but I think we have to be willing to consider kind of taking everything we knew and saying that that's great, and there are vestiges of that should remain, that we can learn from and draw from, but really not only getting outside of the box, but taking the box and putting it in another room for a little while, and really thinking new and designing from the ground up. And this is a great exercise, I think. If you were given the opportunity to create a school or an educational system, what would it look like? No restrictions. All the rules are up to you. And what would you then create, and how would you go about that? And that could be a really fun exercise, one that is happy and uplifting and hopeful, and all the things right now that we probably need. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you can reach out, jgm68@teachcoachlive.com, or go to the website, teachcoachlive.com, and you can contact me there. And I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll talk again soon.